Hi there and welcome to a new video from the G5 Family channel. I wanted to do a video, and this is actually a little bit of a rewind to February of 2021, so almost a year ago. Now, in a previous video, I did a really in-depth walkthrough for the 13A permanent resident visa process. I thought you might find it interesting to see a little bit about the logistics. I talk a lot about the cost of travel and the travel difficulties that I've had, especially with the pandemic. But, you know, the logistics that are involved in going out of province and then, of course, returning back to the province, and some of the challenges. And I went back and found these old videos that I had never published, and I thought that they would be really interesting. So in this next video that I'm about to roll is a trip that I made to Iloilo City back in February of 2021. Like I said, almost a year ago. We'll see you at the end. I'm sitting on a ferry in my car getting ready to cross over to Panay from here in Negros Occidental. To fill in the blanks a little bit, it is Thursday, February 4th. It's a little after 6 a.m. I left this morning at 3 a.m. and drove over here to, I'm actually, at this moment, I'm in Bacolod City, which is the opposite side of the island, the Negros Occidental, where we live. The reason for my travel, it has been since June of last year, June of 2020, since I have left, no exaggeration. Of course, that's not too hard to imagine with all of the travel restrictions around COVID. But anyway, in June of last year, I accomplished my permanent resident visa, my 13A Philippines visa. So that gives me the right to live permanently without having to do the month-to-month tourist visa extensions. And by the way, you can only do that for 3 years. Now, last October, we've been here 3 years. And so I would have needed to have done something anyway. So anyway, the 13A visa is wonderful. It's a little bit of a process, and part of that process is that we have to travel over to Iloilo City because the Bureau of Immigration branch here in Bacolod does not process the 13A visas. Okay, so with the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns, I had not been able to go back to the Iloilo City office, Bureau of Immigration office, to have my passport stamped with the 13A visa and my ACR card, which is it's comparable to a U.S. green card. Anyway, so this morning what I'm doing is I'm actually going to pick up my 13A visa documentation, ACR card. But the reason I'm going is because I could not avoid the required annual check-in, which the window is from the 1st of January until the end of February. And that is a in-person visit. So this may be where I segue over to share the process of getting my travel authority that allows me to travel over to Iloilo City and then return without the risk of quarantine. The interesting thing is, coming back to this moment, I traveled over here to Bacolod, and I am literally on the ferry getting ready to travel. I think we're backing out now to go over to Iloilo, and I have yet been asked for any of my travel documentation, which makes me wonder if I would ever need it. Now, I believe I will find out when I return this afternoon, when I actually return from Iloilo back to Negros. When I arrive back at this port, will I be asked for my travel documentation at that point? I have a strong sense that yes, that's when I'll need to show that document. But the good news is I have it, and I've also been assured that because there's a term called LSI, that's local stranded individuals who, due to the travel restrictions, may have gotten stuck in another city, another province, and have not been able to return. Those LSIs are allowed to return, but they are subject to 14-day quarantine. I am trusting what I've been told that I will not be subject to quarantine because I'm not an LSI. I'm actually just making a day trip over here to take care of my business, and then I'm going to get right back. Total travel time is roughly a little over two and a half hours to Bacolod City, driving my car, and then this ferry will take about 2 hours over to Iloilo. So now you're at 4.5 hours, give or take. And then from the port, it's about a 45-minute to an hour, depending on the traffic, drive over to the Bureau of Immigration office. Now, I decided to get over here early as possible because of the travel authority I'm only allowed to do all of this inside of one day. So even though my appointment is not until 1 p.m. this afternoon, I should arrive at the Bureau of Immigration office at about the time that they open. So my strategy is to get in there and explain to them that I have to return today, and so maybe they'll have mercy on me and go ahead and squeeze me into this morning's schedule. Then I'll do a flip back to the port and catch the ferry back to Negros Occidental here in Bacolod and get checked through and be on my merry way back later this afternoon or early evening. So that's the plan. And again, as I said, the reason for this trip is my 13A visa annual check-in, but also picking up my documentation. I'll close out by sharing this. The interesting thing about this 13A visa, it's my 1-year probationary, and it will expire in June of this year. It's already February, so I'm gonna have to start the process again here in the next, by March or April, I'll have to start the process over again so that it has time to be approved before the June expiration. So here I am picking up my documentation, for February, March, April, May, June. So 4 to 5 months before it expires. But it's okay, it's just the way it is. All right, I'm gonna close out for now. I'll share more as the day progresses and the travel progresses. Just to expound on the story from where I left off earlier, made it over to the Bureau of Immigration office, and upon arriving, I learned that the office was closed, and I just almost couldn't believe it. With all of the effort that went into getting the travel documentation, and then making the plans and actually making the trip, only to get there and the office is closed. The reason it was closed was they discovered that one of their employees had contracted the COVID. So they shut down the office to do a disinfection, and fortunately one of the main ladies was there. She was not allowed to go in either, but she was there, and also one of the guards. And after I expressed my great frustration, and she was very kind, she was very accommodating, she sort of let me vent my absolute frustration, which really just boiled down to, as I said, making all of the preparations, the travel documentation, making the trip itself. It's a 6-hour trip one way, and then a 6-hour trip return, not to mention the cost. So she really allowed me to talk through that, and her only response, what could she say, is that she had no control over the situation, and that okay, I don't really for sure know what happened there. I may have accidentally hit the button and it stopped recording. But just to finish the story, you can see in that video how exhausted I was. I'm kind of like laid back. My shirt's all matted down from sweating all day. I'm sitting in the heat of the car on the ferry, which, by the way, I never mind doing that. It's okay. But just after, sort of the defeat. But to finish that story, what ended up happening is, as I said in the video, there was an officer there, a Bureau of Immigration officer, and one of the security guards. They were in street clothes. They were not dressed for work because the office was closed, but they were there. And when they saw my reaction to the office being closed, she came over and she was very kind, as I already mentioned. But to finish that story, what ended up happening, she actually took my passport, she took my tourist ACR card, and she took the fees that were involved for the check-in, which was 310 pesos, and we estimated the cost of express shipping. And what she was so kind to do, and right there in front of the office, she did a quick interview, and we were able to conduct the annual check-in. And then she took as I said, she took my passport, and she was able to put my visa stamp in it and go ahead and implement that, and then express shipped it to me. I received it all about a week or so later, all said and done, all finalized. Now, the funny part about all of that is that whole process was approved in June of 2020, but I didn't pick it up. I didn't go there until February of 2021, and I didn't really receive the stamp until probably sometime in March, just estimating, I can't remember. And then that one was already expiring again in June, so I literally had to start the process all over again to amend my probationary 13A permanent resident visa to a permanent resident visa. And I did. And I have another video that I'll be putting up as another a part 2 or a part 3 in this series of how I went about acquiring my 13A. And as of the date of this video, it is January of 2022. I just returned from getting my final stamp and my 5-year ACR card and all of that completed. And like I said, I'll share the story of that in a next video. For now, just consider this part 1 of that series, and I hope you'll enjoy it. As always, be sure and feel free to drop a line in the comments with any questions, any suggestions, any thoughts. I welcome those, and if you have commented in the past, you know that I'm very responsive. While you're there, leave a like. It really helps out. If you know of anybody else that's interested in living in the Philippines or needs to know about the process for acquiring your permanent resident visa, whether here in the Philippines or even in the US, be sure and share my videos with them and pass the word. Thanks a lot. We'll see you in the next video.